There's two things I want to talk about. First is death by over optimization, and second is I would call it the problem of having problems. So, okay, as for background, I have mathematical training. However, I also did a lot of engineering, not as a professional, but as an amateur. Um, when it comes to engineering, there's two, I would say, consistent myths in engineering that for some reason is prevalent in the engineering community. One is like engineering is about solving problems, right? Even Elon Musk says that. In a way, that's true. In a way, engineering is about solving problems within constraints, right? Within material, budgetary, assembly constraints, right? Lots of constraints. But really, engineering isn't solving a problem so much as it is maintaining a stable state. What do I mean? Okay, for example, the best engineer isn't someone who solves problems, but the best engineer is a person who doesn't create any problems. For example, if you build a building, right? If you build a skyscraper, you'll never know if someone's a good engineer, right? Because the skyscraper will never fail, right? It'll never fall. It'll never get destroyed, or it won't suffer any damages, right? But if a person is a bad engineer, you'll be able to tell, right? Because the building will fail, right? So in that sense, engineering really isn't about solving problems, but it's actually about not creating any problems. That's actually the problem. That's actually the meta problem of engineering is to not create any problems. Secondly, what I think is really kind of prevalent, pervasive in especially in modern society, industrial society, especially America, is like the idea of techno utopia, right? Techno salvation. People think of technology like Jesus Christ, right? Like it's going to save everyone. That's a very, I think that's a very naive way of looking at technology because technology ultimately, I mean, the etymology, the origin of the word comes from techne, which is Greek for skill or craft or art. Technology really is a way of expressing ourselves, right? It's art. Technology is art, right? It's a form of art. And art was never created to solve anything, right? We don't draw paintings, we don't create music, we don't cook delicious food, we don't dance for a particular reason, right? We don't do it to solve a problem. We do it because we're human. That's what we do as human beings. So to me, to me at least, technology isn't going to solve any of our problems because technology was never meant to solve any of our problems. Technology makes life more convenient, yes. Technology opens more avenues for human exploration and expression, yes. But is technology going to solve anything? It's not going to solve a single damn problem, right? Technology, when you solve one problem, five more show up, right? If you solve world hunger, you need to solve world nutrition, right? Or micronutrients or macronutrients. If you solve poverty, then you have to solve world affluence, right? If you solve one problem, 10 more pop up, right? Because it's never, you're not, it's you, the technology is, was never meant to solve anything because technology creates what I would call baseline, right? It creates the baseline. It creates our standards of living, right? Our expectations of life. So I think that's one big myth that people have to dispel with. Technology cannot solve anything. Technology is what we do as human beings because it's art, and that's what we do. The second problem is really related to the first, which is over optimization. In our society, we value efficiency, right? Productivity, kind of like that go-getter. That's um, we want everything to be efficient, which is great, but over efficiency, over optimization can actually be detrimental. When we focus, when we have tunnel vision, when we focus on one thing at the expense of everything else, that's when things go, that's when things go wrong. The classic example, um, for example, in a person's life, if a person focuses solely on their career and money at the expense of everything else, at the expense of their health, at the expense of their friendships and family, right? At the expense of everything, that's when we see tragedy, right? A rich person, a rich, quote unquote, successful person, right? But who's miserable, depressed, lonely, right? Because you sacrifice everything for what, right? So there's this, I would say there's this absolutely pervasive problem of over optimization, right? Focusing on one or even several metrics at the expense of everything else. So those are probably the two biggest economic problems. Not really economic. These are the two biggest blind spots in the current economic, I would say, thinking. The two biggest blind spots are one that technology will say will solve everything, and two is that the the cult of over optimizing, right? Over optimizing everything, which actually is detrimental.